What's going on, everybody? Josh Cherry here, episode number 1 of 417 Sound, and I'm so excited to have my very first guest be a very good friend of mine, Casey Callison. Everybody, let's hear it for Casey. Casey, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Josh.
You bet, man. So, how you been? What's going on in your life? What's new?
Dude, yeah, been good. Not much changes when you're in your 30s, I feel like. So, for me, it's really just working and trying to find time for gigs and stuff like that.
Yeah, I hear you. So what's your day job? I know you're obviously killing the music scene right now, but what do you do during the day?
I work for Jack Henry. It's a banking software company, so I work with the technical writing department. So I always tell people the easiest way to describe that is writing instruction manuals for how to use our software. And of course, there's a lot more to it than that, but that's just the easiest way that I found to describe it. And yeah,
Yeah, sounds very fun. That's very cool. Well, so for those of you who don't know, Casey and I go way, way, way back. We are both proud alumni of Reed Spring High School, and so
yeah,
Casey
man.
actually kind of started uh, when I first was learning how to play guitar and sing and getting into the whole music thing. Casey was light years ahead of me, and so we used to kind of we grab our guitars and play we played in the church band together. We played in the lunchroom. There were several other people.
Yeah,
Brighton, shout out to Brighton for being
yeah,
part of
yeah,
that crew
yeah,
too. Tyler Garud as well, which I think we'll have him on the podcast at some point. So Casey and I go way back
yeah.
and spent some time in our garage playing together. We had a little what was the name of our little worship band we had? One Way Street.
One Way Street.
One
Yeah,
Way
yeah, yeah.
Street. How could you forget? That's great.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Dude,
So
yeah.
so
Yeah.
I mean
And
just
that was like right as the time that One Direction came out too. So we were
yeah.
like, yeah,
Perfect.
who cares?
Yeah, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. We'll roll with it. So tell me about,
Yep.
I mean, just kind of growing up in the area. Obviously we kind of have similar backgrounds, but um,
Mhm.
kind of tell me about what kind of got you started into music. 'Cause like I said, you were kind of ahead of me in terms of playing guitar and singing and stuff. So kind of what got you into that?
Yeah, man. I always loved music. I remember some of my earliest memories are sitting in the truck with my dad and listening to Queen, which at the time felt like it was so old, but actually, whenever we were kids, it was barely even 10 years old, if that. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I just always remember listening to music with him and music always kind of being on in the house or on the boat or just wherever we were. So um, then I kind of like got into guitar by being at our friend Kyle Cooper's house one day. I was over there and he had a choir thing that he had to do, and I wasn't in choir. So he was like, "Yeah, just hang out here. I'll be back in an hour." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." His parents were like my parents back then. Um, so he had his guitar sitting there and he had one of those Fender playbooks. And I was like, I'm just going to learn some chords. And so then he got back. I was like, dude, look what I learned. And then he's like, oh, that's cool. And showed me some more stuff. And then that kind of evolved into us playing together a little bit. And then with Tyler. So having those guys help to teach me really helped to accelerate my playing and understanding of music in general. And so then from there, I just kind of combined, my love of music with my love of writing and started writing songs and putting stuff like that together and doing what I could with it.
That's awesome. Yeah, man. It's so cool when I get online, and obviously, I'm a big believer of all of us being in the music industry, supporting each other all the time. And, it's always so cool to see you and Jake Duvall and Tyler Garut and all these
Mhm.
local guys that we kind of all grew up together. And, it's really cool to see us kind of getting in the scene together. So it always just, just warms my heart, man. So
Yeah, and
what's,
Jake was actually the big reason that I got back into it because he and I had always talked about doing music, and then um, just one day he was kind of like, I'm at a point in my life. Let's try to book some gigs. I'm like, sure, whatever. I think actually one day we were at the Dylan Carmichael show in Springfield, And he was like, "We can do this." And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, we could." Not at that scale at that time, of course, but yeah, it just kind of motivated us to start booking gigs and having fun with it, and has led into this, big kind of blossoming I've had over the last few years with playing a lot of local gigs and being in a couple bands.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you said you remembered listening to Queen. Do you have a favorite Queen
Oh
song?
yeah.
I love Queen.
Oh dude. Man, I don't know about a favorite song, but I just always love watching what little bit of footage of their live performances that I can, because you can sit there and listen to some of their more deep cuts, and on the album it sounds cool, but then you hear them play it live, and you're like, holy smokes! Especially like if you get any of the footage from that Live Aid show, man,
Oh,
they just are
geez.
so energetic. If there's one band I could go back and see live, it would be them for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if
The
there's
first
ever
song I
been.
remember.
Sorry,
Go
I
ahead.
don't know if there's ever been a front man of a band that could work a crowd like Freddie Mercury. That dude had the crowd in the palm of
No,
his hand at
probably not.
every minute of every show.
Yep, yep. I do remember one time being like, I don't know, maybe 6 years old. We had just moved to Branson from the St. Louis area when I was younger. So I remember calling into a local radio station and requesting "We Will Rock You." I thought it was so cool.
That's a classic, man. You know, it's funny.
Of course, yeah.
I was just listening to Theo Vaughn's podcast, and he had Hardy on today. And one of the
Mhm.
things they were talking about was how back even even when we were growing up, the digital age hadn't hit yet. And Hardy was talking
Right.
about, back then you had like you if you loved a song, you had to sit in front of your radio and wait for the song to come back around to get that feeling again. And I think there's something to be said.
Hmm.
Like now everything is so we have such immediate gratification all the time, but like
Yeah.
it was so powerful. Like when you really, really liked a song and really wanted to hear it, you either had to call the radio station and get them to play it for you, or you just had to sit in front of a radio and wait for it to come around. And even you probably had cassette tapes, so
Yeah.
you press the record button real quick so you could
Mhm.
listen to it all you wanted.
Yep, yep. And if you didn't get it right when the song started, you're like, well, I guess I'll wait for the whatever at the top of the next hour or two to
Yeah,
try to catch it again.
yeah,
You know,
right.
before you could just stream everything, it was hard those days.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So you were married. Your lovely
Mm-hmm.
wife Izzy. You got a beautiful baby boy Brooks. Who okay? You got to tell
Yep.
me, did the name come from Brooks and Dunn? What was is that part of your naming cycle here?
No, but it should have been because I do love Brooks and Dunn too. Honestly, it's just kind of one of those names that we heard. Just we were out one day and heard someone say the name Brooks. I was like, dude, that name sounds awesome. And I think Brooks Callison has a pretty solid ring to it, and
Dude, it rocks. I love
that
it.
was just kind of it. We actually didn't even fully name him until he was born, and the doctor was like, "Well, what's the name?" And we were like, "All right, I think we finally settled."
Heads it's Brooks, tails it's Dunn. Right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That's awesome, man. So
I
tell
will
me,
say the first song that was on the car whenever we got in to take him home was a Brooks and Dunn song, like on the
there you
actual
go.
radio. So
See,
that
that's
was
what I'm talking
interesting.
about, man. The radio just has a different. There's just something different
I
about
know.
the radio. It knows what you need in that
Yeah,
moment. It's just if you're going through a
yeah,
heartbreak, it knows it's got to play the saddest country song of all time. So it's just something
yeah.
special about the radio. So tell me, I know you've gotten like you've kind of talked about already. You've really gotten into writing, and I've loved listening
Mhm.
to the stuff you've written. Saw you on Color
Thank you.
10. Got to do your
Yeah.
little spot on Color 10, and then I listened to your NPR
Mhm.
stuff, which was great. So kind of walk me through the process, and I want to talk about the NPR show too, the Tiny Desk, because that was seemed like it was a lot of fun. But kind of walk
Oh
me
yeah.
through your writing process. I mean, do you kind of sit down and say, I really need to write a song right now, or you just kind of jot notes as something comes to you? Kind of walk me through what your process is for writing a song.
Sure. I mean, it's a little bit of both. It's never one exact way. I've got a lot of friends that like dedicate time to songwriting every, X number of hours every week or during this time of day. A lot of them aren't parents, so it's a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Um, but for me, even before Brooks was born, it was always kind of like ideas here and there. Like I would hear somebody talking and be like, oh man, that story would make a good song, or like a little snippet of a sentence, be like, man, that would make a really good hook,
Hmm.
and then kind of form everything around that. And so yeah, it just kind of comes and goes. And then kind of once I get that um, initial hook and melody, it's pretty easy to kind of sit down and put a lot of the words together, at least a verse and a chorus, and then kind of hang on to it and return to it. Um, I've got a lot of friends that write melody first, so they'll find a really cool melody on their guitar or piano or whatever, and then write around that. So for me, it's always kind of been built around words instead of around the melody. It all just kind of comes together in a different way for me. But yeah, there's no real like I need to sit down and write a song right now. It's always just kind of when inspiration strikes, and I always keep like a little notepad in one of my backpacks, or the notes phone on your app handy to get that down. Like the other day, I was laying in bed and I had actually just woken up. The storm had woken me up, and I was like, okay, well, it's that time where I'd already been sleeping a little bit, so going back to sleep wasn't so easy. And I just got a little hook for a song and I wrote it down, and that's what I've been working on lately.
That's awesome, man. So tell me, I mean, one of the things I was going to ask you is what, in your opinion, makes a good song? If it's the melody, if it's the lyrics, something else. I feel like you and I kind of feel the same way. That I think the lyrics really drive home. You can
Yeah.
put, especially with the machine the way it is these days, especially in country music, pop music. A lot of it is just seems like the same melodies and
Yeah.
things just kind of recycled over and over. And I think really what sets things
Yeah.
apart is the lyrics. So it's kind of interesting to hear you talk about that, because that's kind of what I feel like too. The lyrics set
Yeah.
songs
And
apart.
lyrics have always, yeah, absolutely. And I found myself recently kind of listening to more lyrics driven artists where like I'll be like, oh, have you heard the new Pony Bradshaw album? My friends will be like, who?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, go and listen to them, So I
Uh-huh.
found myself listening to people like Pony Bradshaw or Drayton Farley or, J.R. Carroll, or there's, even local guys, like Jake Stringer is a really good songwriter, Lyle Strickland as well.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a lot of people that I find those lyrics are really relatable. And like you said, whenever you're down, there's a certain type of song that you want to hear that is sad, could make you sadder, but
Right.
that just is what it is. That's how you want to. That's how you want to feel. So I find that those lyrics really help make me feel the music a little bit more than just the melody.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Um, it's actually funny you brought up Lyle Strickland. I was just talking with somebody today about his venue in Buffalo, and I had
Mm-hmm.
no idea about it. And somebody was like, "Have you heard of this place?" And he brings in some really cool people, and I had no clue.
Yeah.
I've heard of Lyle and I've known of his music, but had
Mm-hmm.
no idea that he has this little hideout in Buffalo where he brings some really cool artists in. So I'm gonna have to check that
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You
what?
definitely should. I
No, go ahead. You're good.
go ahead. I was gonna say, yeah, I haven't actually been able to get up for one of those, but I've been meaning to for a long time now. And yeah, it seems like a really cool little spot.
Yeah, it does. So you've got Honkytonk Dream is something that you and Jake
Mm-hmm.
Duvall and Tyler Groot has kind of been the thing here recently, but now you've got Casey Callison and the Shin Kickers. So you're
Yeah. Yeah.
you're still, which I love the name. I messaged Casey after I saw his Facebook post of his new band, and I was like, dude, that name rocks. I love it. So kind of tell me about those two projects, and kind of are you balancing both of them? Are you focusing on one more than the other right now, or kind of where you're at with both of those things?
Yeah, they both serve completely different purposes for my musical like journey. So Honky Tonk Dream is awesome because we're playing really good country covers that everybody is familiar with, that everyone wants to get up and dance to. It's all the songs that we grew up loving that we have kind of seen fall out of radio love.
Hmm.
Um, so we've seen that a lot of people just want to get up and dance to those songs, and you hear those certain things like. When you hear "Down on the Farm" by Tim McGraw, like you're back in high school. You're
Yeah.
remembering all of those things that you heard the first time you heard that song, or just uh, oh yeah, I remember sitting in my friend's basement. We were jamming to the song, and it was one of the best nights. So everyone's really into that, and it's a lot of fun. Just playing all of those old songs that I was passionate about back then is just a blast. And then yeah, Casey Callison and the Shin Kickers is more focusing right now. It's more of like we talked about, lyric focused Americana type of music. It's like somebody called me the country guy the other day, and I was like, man, I don't feel like this music is really super country. Like if you don't listen to country, it is. But
Yeah.
if you do listen to country, it's like riding that line. So a term on Reddit that I heard that describes it pretty well is y'alternative. So that's
I like it.
I think that's
I like
probably
it.
the best description. Yeah. But
Y'alternative.
yeah, so that's kind of so that's kind of the focus for that, is playing those songs that I'm really passionate about playing. And I also feel like those kind of mix in well with the tone of my originals as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, there's
Mm.
definitely I started a band this year, the Hucklebearers,
Yeah.
and we're kind of doing the covers, the dance type, get up off your seat kind
Mm.
of type of deal. And there's something, and I kind of want to touch on this with you too because you came to one of my shows in Springfield one time, and you're like, "Hey, play an original," and I was like, "Eh." Um, I feel like my originals are so close to my chest. Do you ever kind of experience do you get a little more amped up or a little more anxious when you're playing your original stuff just because of so much that's gone into writing that song?
Yeah, and they're all kind of personal stories to be told as well. Even the ones that I've written that tell a story that aren't really even about me or a specific person, but more of like a place and a feeling are still super personal. So, and it's also something that you're created that you're sharing with somebody else. It's like a really intimidating process to share those the first time you're writing some of those songs. I remember the first time I played a couple of my originals, I had them written for like a year before I finally ever even played them for anybody.
Hmm.
Um, and then I played one for Jake Duvall, and he was like, "Wow, that was actually pretty good." And I was like, "Oh, wow, cool." And so then I kind of got a little more confidence, but it was still really intimidating. And then it wasn't even until this past couple of years where I really started to actually like play them for people and put a focus on building the songs. And it was really cool. When the Shin Kickers started practicing, I sent out just audio recordings of me playing the songs, and then we came together to practice, and everybody already had like kind of plans in place for what they were going to do, and everything just kind of worked really well creatively together, and it just felt so cool to see that. And uh, yeah, so to answer your question, I kind of got off topic there, but to answer
Oh,
your
you're good.
question, yeah, I did feel like it was pretty difficult to play those at first for people. And there are still times where I'll be in a gig and I'm like, I'm not going to play originals in this gig.
Yeah.
I
Well,
just kind
and
of feel it based off of the crowd.
yeah, and it's as songwriters, if you're just somebody who's maybe not a musician, you're just listening to this podcast. As musicians, as songwriters, and I know Casey and I have talked about this before. There's a lot of shows that we go into, and we're just background music, and we're totally cool with that.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. But the ones that people are there intently listening to us, usually kind of the wineries and maybe the writers rounds or stuff like that. It's a lot easier for us to break out our originals in those moments, because like I said, they're so near and dear to us that it's hard to just throw it out there as background noise. And like I said, we're totally cool. That's 90% of the time that we're hired to play a show. We're hired as background noise, and that's totally fine. We'll have half the crowd that's into it, half the crowd that's just trying to eat their dinner. And we're totally fine with whatever the gig may provide with us. But it's cool to hear you talk about that, and I know you kind of have the same feelings as me. Is it's just like there's a really a time and a place for your original stuff, and so it's just a whole different ball game.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. So that's why doing the KSMU thing was really cool. I know
yeah,
you're
so
kind
tell
of
me
wanting to
about
touch
that.
on that anyway.
Yeah,
So
tell me about it.
why not? So yeah, what I did for them was called Studio Live. And Just Belial runs that up here at the local NPR station that's run on Missouri State's campus. And so that was a lot of fun going in there. And it was just me and Mike Blim on steel guitar
Who's
and
phenomenal, by the way.
just
Mike
played.
is Mike is
Oh
awesome.
my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's also an incredible amp builder. He has
Okay.
amps that are on tour like worldwide with like Riley Green's guitarist and a few other people. So
Wow, I didn't know that.
legit, like incredible musician, incredible builder, and an incredible person as well. Um, So yeah, it was super intimate. Like it was in that room. It was me and Mike and the two hosts, and then on the other side of the glass was the sound engineers. That was it. And so, you know, it felt weird playing to just a small room like that, where it's not like there's no background sound. You don't hear dishes rattling. You don't hear quiet murmurs. It's just silence and
Yeah.
you. So it took me like a few songs to really settle in, and then actually maybe in the second song, my song Drifter, I looked up and then Jess was kind of like wiping her eyes, and I'm like, whoa, somebody had an actual like emotional response to one of my songs. That
Yeah.
was really cool, and it kind of like I had to sit there and kind of like collect myself a little bit. I was like, oh, need a second before I can talk, but um, yeah, man, that was awesome. And so then after that, they do the Studio Live happy hour at Mother's, and so that was from 6 to 8, and then went out there and played a full 2 hour set list with the full band. And that's actually how the band's name came about. Was they were talking about Rand Cummings was talking about how to get to the barrel room at Mother's, because it's super sketchy if you've never been there before. You literally have to walk into a door that looks like it's an employees only entrance. So he's like, if you see anybody, just kick him in the shin. And Jess is like, no, don't kick him in the shin. And so at the end, there was the joke like, Casey and the Shin Kickers, that's what we're doing. And I was like, that actually sounds pretty good. And then my buddy Kyle Vance texted me and he's like, you are Casey and the Shin Kickers now. And I was like, that's cool. I'm good.
That's awesome. Hey,
so yeah, we had that place packed out at the end of it. Like at the Barrel House, they were bringing tables out because it was full. A few like Lyle Strickland was there hanging out. There were a few other local musicians, and that was just a lot of fun to see everyone. And I played, I think 4 or 5 of my originals mixed into that 2 hour set, and got a lot of positive feedback there.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'll drop the link to your NPR stuff in the bio here of the podcast. So when people listen, if you want to check that out, I would highly recommend it. I went and listened to it, and it was really good. So, so when you're playing a show, do you kind of stick to a set list? Do you take requests? Kind of what's your how do you operate your set?
Yeah, so whenever I'm doing acoustic solo stuff, or when me and Jake Duvall are doing acoustic stuff together, we kind of have a list of songs that we know we're going to play. But most of the time, it's after each song, we'll look at each other and be like, hey, we're doing this one next. And we just kind of go into it, and we will take requests for that one. Now, when the full band's together, we have a set list, and that's what we're doing. With Honkytonk Dream, we do a little bit more requests, just because all of us have played country music for so long, and we're all like decent enough musicians that as long as one of us knows it, we can probably throw it together and be okay.
Right.
But that's what cover bands are about. You're just out there to have fun. Like no one really wants you to be perfect all the time, and you don't have to be. There's a lot of space to have fun and be creative on your own there. With my focus on Casey and the Shin Kickers as trying to build into original act, I really want everything to flow exactly, because I build my set list around my originals, so everything kind of ebbs and flows along with those. So if the right request came along, maybe I'd throw it in, but generally it's a stick to the set list, and it's that's the whole experience of it for us.
So what's on Casey Callison's I'm not gonna play it no matter how many times you request it list?
I like to say these that I won't play, but Jake Duvall always ends up talking me into playing Sweet Caroline. I hate playing it. I don't like the song. Tennessee Whiskey.
Friends that's an interesting one.
All of those, so all of those I'm just not a huge fan of playing, but I don't know. There's probably, unless I don't know the song, then I'll probably be talked into playing it. But there are times where people are like, hey, do you know so-and-so? And I'm like, no. Like, oh, come on. And I'm like, I literally don't know this song. I don't know what you want from
me. Yeah. So there's the joke between musicians is always Wonderwall. It's the song that every very average guitar player plays around a bonfire. I don't know. For me, I feel like I always roll my eyes at Wagon Wheel. That's
good too. Yeah,
that's one I roll my eyes at. I also hate playing Sweet Caroline. I'm not sure why I hate playing it. I don't hate the song. I just don't like playing it.
Yep.
And then trying to think. Really, Wagon Wheel's the one that usually. Oh, American Pie. I love American Pie, but it's like an 8-minute song. There's like 18
Mm-hmm.
verses, and so usually I'll
Yeah, that's a
compromise that
lot,
by
man.
yeah. I'm like, okay, I'll play like 3 or 4 verses, and then I'm out. So, but there's always one.
Yep.
We'll never shame you for requesting a song. Make sure that the musician that you're listening to is taking requests, because there's also, like Casey said, if he's playing his original set or he's got a set
Mm-hmm.
list and you come up and you're like, hey, I've had 4 whiskey sours and I want to hear Tennessee whiskey, kind of. Casey's probably
Yeah.
going to be like, man, this really sucks. I don't like this at all.
Yeah, and honestly, that's why I've really focused on getting original stuff going too. Is like I love playing covers, but at the same time, like I want to also have a creative outlet as well for my originals. And it's funny because whenever I was out in Oklahoma this past spring to see Turnpike Troubadours, I was sitting at the bar waiting for the show, and I just went alone. And I was talking to this couple from Texas, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we're coming to Branson," and I was like, "Oh yeah, when?" And they told me, I was like, "I actually have a gig lined up." And it's like the guy asked, like, "Oh, do you do originals?" I was like, "Yeah, I can." He goes, "Don't."
You're like, all right, man,
Okay.
chill. Take it easy.
So that's the Branson
Uh,
crowd in a nutshell.
yeah, I get that. So it's funny you brought up Turnpike. I love Turnpike, and I'm so jealous that you've got to see them. I'm assuming you saw them at Kane's Ballroom in Tulsa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So
Yep.
that actually led me into a question. I wanted to ask you, what's your favorite concert you've seen? Is part A, and part B is, if you could play any venue in the world, what would it be? And I'm gonna handcuff you a little bit, because my answer
Okay.
would be the Grand Ole Opry, and I think most probably country-ish people would say the Opry. So I'm gonna take an Opry out of the equation. So there's a two-parter. What's the best concert? And then if you could play any venue other than the Opry, where would it be?
Sure. I have two answers to the first part of that question. Best concert, as far as enjoyment wise, was Turnpike because it was the second night that they came off of their hiatus. Everyone was amped up. The entire band just had huge smiles on their face the whole time, and it was just incredible. Um, as far as pure talent goes, man, Zach Brown Band was by far the most talented full band I've gotten to see live. Every single one of those dudes is just spot on all the time. They ripped through. They did like Metallica into their set. They worked all sorts of stuff into their set, and everything sounded incredible. Um, yeah, if you're gonna take the Opry out, then probably Red Rocks.
Oh, that's a good one.
Red Rocks is beautiful. Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of a bucket list for all performers who are trying to play a big show.
Yeah. So would the Opry have been your number one answer?
Red Rocks was the first thing that popped into my
Okay.
head, but after you said Opry, I was like, okay, that would be dumb not to play the Opry.
There's something, and I'm gonna it's gonna be interesting for me doing these podcasts, because I'm not gonna be able to answer every question every episode, because it's gonna get very repetitive. But since you're my guinea pig, I kind of people are, I guess, getting to know me
Yeah.
too, if they don't know me yet. Um, the Other than the Opry, and Red Rocks is a great answer. There's something about Madison Square Garden and just the magnitude of the garden and selling out the garden and what it represents, like that you've made it. That's the pinnacle
Yeah.
of live entertainment. Now
Yeah.
now going to see, like we went and saw Garth Brooks at Razorback Stadium last year. Like, it would be so
Oh
cool to
yeah.
sell out a
PWR.
football.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it would be. And I know you're a Razorback fan.
Yeah. Yeah.
It would be so cool to sell out a stadium too. But there's just something majestic about Madison Square Garden that I think is just, and there's comedians that are selling out the garden, which is crazy to me. But no, it's interesting. Zach Brown Band, I'm not as big of a fan of their newer stuff. They kind of went through that little weird phase where I don't know
Yeah.
what they were
Yeah.
doing, like their Chris Gaines kind of
Yeah.
emo.
Yeah. That's a great comparison.
Yeah, it was just kind of, I think everybody was kind of like, what are they doing? But musician, I mean, talent wise, I think you're onto something. And it kind of, they are like the country music Mumford and Sons to me. Like they have a big band and they all can pick and
Hmm.
play everything just like to perfection. So that's interesting. I like, for me, the one that stands out for me is Chris Stapleton. I've seen him 3 times and he does not
Yeah.
miss a note. And I've never, it's hard for musicians to go to concerts and not kind of nitpick here and there. Obviously they're up there and we're in the crowd, and so there's only so much
Hmm.
you can do. Like, it's not like I'm sitting there with my wife going, this guy sucks. But
Yeah.
but you kind of do. But every time I've seen Chris Stapleton, I've just been literally in awe of the things he can do vocally. And there's nothing
Hmm.
more depressing as a musician than realizing that Chris Stapleton went like 15 years with nobody knowing who he was. Like, he was in the business, but he was just the lead singer of the Steel Drivers, and they were up for Grammys and stuff, but he was not Chris Stapleton. And I'm like, is it
Yeah.
impossible to make it in this business? Like,
I don't know. Like the Steel Drivers have made it for what they
oh,
do.
for sure,
They are like the band for that. But
for sure.
think about how many just like songwriters are out there that you'll never know the name of them, but you'll know the songs that they wrote. They're
Yeah.
everywhere, man. All
Oh
over
yeah.
the radio. 90% of what you hear isn't written by whoever's singing it. It's written by some person in a
Yeah.
bar somewhere or at a coffee shop
Yep.
that's handed on to somebody else, and then eventually they're like, "Oh, I think you would sound good recording this."
Yep. So, I think bluegrass, like, I think bluegrass players are some of the most pure talented players in all of
Hmm.
music. Like, I listen to Ricky Skaggs. I love Ricky Skaggs, and just the things he does,
Hmm.
I don't understand. Ron Block's kind of the same way. Like, I'm just like, how are you doing what you're doing? And there's very few,
Yeah, a really good.
like Brad Paisley, is a really good picker. Keith Urban's excellent as well, but like that breed is kind of like fading out for the bro country stuff that I don't think
Yeah,
any true country fan really enjoys. But just the
yeah,
artistry is, it's there. It's just kind of like you said, it's more in the bars, and that's kind of what my goal is with this podcast. Is, I think that for a small town, a small area, like, we've got a pretty killer local music scene, and I think that we're very fortunate. And I think the amount of talent that's here is vastly underrated and overlooked. And I think that we've kind of talked about like trying to break into Northwest Arkansas and some other areas, and it's kind of cliquish. And I'm like, man,
mhm,
they're missing out on some good musicians from Southwest Missouri. And this is not going to be just a country podcast either. Like, I've got some other people lined up
yeah, yeah.
that we're um, I one person I really want to talk to, and she's probably gonna, if she sees this, she's probably gonna be like, I didn't even remember this person, but Sabrina Dietz from Reed Spring.
Oh
You
yeah,
remember
yeah,
Sabrina? Like,
hmm,
dude, she is
yeah.
talented, and it's a different, like,
Extremely.
but she's phenomenal. And so I'm really,
Yeah,
I'm really hoping that we can kind of shed the light on some other people from some other genres that are super super talented. And so as we're talking about, instrumentation, and we're talking about Zach Brown Band being, I want to know what you play. What do you play? Any other instruments other than guitar? And if you're a guitar man, I want to know what guitar you have, and most importantly, does your guitar have a name?
all right, all right. Um, I will in Honkytonk Dream fill in on bass if we, because we've got six of us, so dropping one of us and filling on the bass is pretty regular for me. So um, I do that. I did play mandolin for a little while, and then just found I didn't enjoy it as much as guitar. Same with piano. I picked that up and played around with it for a little bit, but it's so hard. It's probably something to do with my own like patience. I've been playing guitar for 16 years now, so it's hard for me to pick up something new. and be new at it and just let myself be new at it. When I can
Yeah.
just pick up my guitar, I already know where everything is. I know the notes, I know, the scales, and I know that it's the same concept, but you still have to learn that, like, where your hands go on the piano, or, it's, there's just nothing I've enjoyed quite as much as guitar. So with that being said, you can see my Telecaster right back there on my
Yeah.
couch, and then over, like, here, that's my Guild that I play. It's a 1977 Guild F50. Um, it's a big jumbo guitar, and it's just beautiful. It's what I've played at for Ozarks Live, for NPR Studio Live. It's what for the Tiny Desk contest that we're entering. It's what I played on that video as well. I don't name my guitars. I don't have anything against anybody that does, but for me, I have just never found one. Or, like, there was a time where I thought I was going to name guitars, and they were all just like stupid forced names, like Loretta, which is a great name, but it's like, obviously that's Loretta Lynn, like some country guy. But
Yeah.
so yeah, it's like, no, I'm just gonna let them be guitars. And for me, what a guitar is like, it's a tool that you make music with. And
Right.
I love my guitars, and I take care of them, and I do feel a special bond with a lot of the guitars that I've had forever. But yeah, just for me, naming doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But now I have to know what your guitars' names are.
I don't name my guitars either.
Oh,
Dude,
okay, all right.
so you remember, I mean, you were literally with me the night I brought home my first guitar. I came to
Mm-hmm.
church and I was like, look, Casey, look what I've got. And I actually remember us being in my in my garage, and I was trying to play a song and I was trying to sing it, and you grabbed the end of my guitar and you said, "You're not ready to sing and play yet." I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay, sounds good."
I
Move
don't
on.
remember exactly which song it was, but you were trying to do way too much at the time, because you're like trying to finger pick with it
It
and
was
sing.
By Your Side
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. That's
by
right.
I don't even remember who
Um,
sings it.
I don't either, but yeah, you're right. That's the song.
Yeah.
I'm like, man,
Man, I love
both
that song.
sound good when you're not doing them at the same time. But
Yeah, and that's actually why I picked up the guitar. I had Casey and I had our friend Brighton that both played guitar, and we would go lead worship for the youth group at our church. And if there was a time where both of them, they both played tennis, and so there would be some time
mhm,
sometimes when whatever, they were out of town for tennis or whatever, and then I didn't get to sing at church because I had nobody to play guitar for me. I was like, you know what? I think it's time. I think it's
yeah,
time to pick something. And hindsight, it was the best decision I ever made. But my first guitar was a really, really cheap Fender acoustic, and it was a piece of junk. And I played it from the time I was 16 until 2 years ago. I got my first Martin, and the sound difference when I sat in Guitar Center and played that Martin for the first time, I was like, "This is a guitar. What I've been playing
yeah,
is
yeah,
cardboard." Like it's not, and nothing against Fender guitars. They make some of their guitars are great. I just bought a very basic beginner guitar and I still have it
mhm,
sitting here. I never touch it anymore, but I honestly don't think I can ever get rid of it. Like, when you're
yeah,
talking about you
yeah,
grow an attachment to your guitar, like when you think about all you go through together, or your a parent dies, or you get broken up with or whatever, and you write a really heartfelt song on that guitar, like it just becomes a
mhm,
part of that instrument. And it's hard to
yeah,
explain, but it's real. Like, you really do get attached to guitars. And that's why you'll see, like, Willie Nelson will hop up there with an old beat up thing that literally looks like it's about to fall apart, but he would never trade it for the
yep,
world. They add character over time. You take them on the road and you go play shows and you drop it
yeah,
and get a little dent in it or whatever, and it just makes it sound better. And it doesn't make sense,
yeah.
but
I
it
agree.
is. That's how it is. So
Yep, yep. I like a guitar that's a little bit beat up from honest wear. Like, you can tell that someone's actually taken it and played it and used it the way it's intended to be used.
it's like a baseball glove. You gotta break it in. You get a brand
Yeah,
new
it's
one.
got
It
to
just
get
doesn't.
comfortable, man.
That's right. That's right. So I'm not, I don't want to ask you what your favorite local venues are, because I know there's so many, and honestly, I love them all. I'm sure you do too. But um, what I do, kind of how I want to frame the question is, if I'm a venue owner that's listening to this and I'm wanting to have live music, or wanting to have more live music, kind of what makes a good experience for you as a musician when you show up to a venue?
Yeah, I'd say having a solid schedule is pretty solid. You know, like there's a lot of venues. There's kind of like, yeah, kind of show up whenever, but there's other venues that are like, be here by 4:30, sound check before 6, and then we'll have food ready for you. We'll have drinks ready for you, and then you can start by 9. Um, I feel like that's always really awesome. You can tell which people are actually into music and do it for the experience versus which people are just like, yeah, we're gonna have some people here and they want to hear some noise.
Yeah, right.
Because there's like, yeah, go set up over there in the corner. There's probably some outlets over there, and it's like one ratty outlet that has like a burn mark left over from when someone like overamped it. But making sure that you actually have your musicians taken care of as far as sound and like I said, outlets is a huge thing. Especially if you have a band. I've played shows like, yeah, we've got power, which every musician has, and it's like one single outlet that you're expected to run the entire band off of. Or you show up and they're like, oh yeah, we've got a PA, and it's like one single 12-inch speaker. There's no sub or anything like that, and
Yeah.
then you sound bad and everyone's frustrated. So
Right.
I would say, making sure those expectations are set as well. Like if you say that you have a PA, tell me exactly what you have, so that way I know if I do need to load my own
Right.
or what's going on.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
will
the important
always
things for me. Like, yeah,
I will always err on the side of using my own stuff. Like, what your own stuff sounds like.
mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah,
there have been times where I've shown up and it's like, oh, we've got our own PA system, and I'm like, great, and I go in and I'm like, I'm not, I'm not messing with that. But there,
100%.
there's some venues, and I won't name any names, but there's some venues out there that I will take less money from them to play for them because of how they
Mm-hmm.
treat me and how they
Oh,
treat my
absolutely.
wife and how they treat my family. There's one that comes to mind that I don't make as much money there, but I will book them every time I get the chance because they will give me everything I need. They never make me pay for anything. They will give me stuff to go. And I don't like we never go into a show expecting like, oh, I want a free pizza or like I want to be
Right.
catered
Yeah.
on. Like we never go into shows like that. But like there's another place that I play a lot that I insist on paying, and they're like, no, here, have dessert too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just take it. You're great. We love you. Come back. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's for me, it's about the experience. Like, obviously we do this for a living, and we're so fortunate. I mean, a lot of us have second jobs too, but we're so fortunate to make any money at all playing music. The amount of people that can do that in the world is so small, and so we're super fortunate to do that.
Yeah.
But I we still do it for money a lot, and like I said, it's just I would 100% take a great experience and kind people and just a great atmosphere over a little bit more money every day of the week.
Yeah, I agree. It's about building those relationships with people, and uh, yeah, keeping that in mind whenever you go into the gigs makes a
Yeah,
huge difference.
yeah, for sure. So we can kind of wrap up here. I've got a couple things. For first of all, um I it's interesting to me because there's obviously mental health and everything is kind of big right now, and taking care of your mental health. And um we see a lot of times that people are who are outward facing, like we are performers, people like that are kind of struggling internally. And um kind of what I want to know is, have you ever suffered from like performance anxiety? Do you ever get like over amped up? I've not been super open with my anxiety that I've dealt with in the past and stuff, but I've had people ask me like, well, you've got anxiety. Like, how does that not bother you when you get on stage? And it's 100% a release for me. Like, I am not thinking about
Yeah.
that at all. But for some people to get up on stage in front of people is just terrifying, and it would just fill them with dread. So like, how do you deal with that? Have you ever experienced that? Are you kind of like me where it's just like you get on stage and you're in a whole other world? Just kind of walk me through that.
Yeah, I'd say I'm like you, where once I step up onto the stage, like everything just kind of like erases out of my head except for the show, and I get another boost of energy, especially once you start getting the crowd into it. You know, you start seeing head bob, feet stomp, people
Yeah.
up dancing, people cheering. Like, oh yeah, I'm in it now. Um, but I will say that yeah, like over the past couple of years, I found that I do have a lot of like I don't know if I want to say depression, but there's definitely like a heaviness whenever I don't get to create the way I want to create, or like, maybe I have a toddler. Some days are just really rough, and then you just sit on your couch once he finally goes to bed, and then you feel guilty for just sitting on your couch. Like, man, I should be practicing guitar, or I should be writing, and then those thoughts kind of intrude and really like get in there and make you feel like, why do I even do this? Like, am I going to be able to do anything with this? What's the point of me taking all of this time and effort if I'm not going to do anything? All of those things pop into my head whenever I don't get the opportunity to have that outlet of, you know, playing for people or show or writing or whatever that may be. That's where I find my biggest struggle is on the reverse end of it. Whenever I don't get that interaction or I don't get that energy, that's whenever it hits me the most.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting thing because, like I said, I mean, some people who don't have anxiety or any feelings like that, getting in front of people is the one thing that would set them off. And then
Yeah.
got somebody like me who is a kind of just a generally anxious person, and a lot of people don't see that because I'm so outward all the time. But then
Mm-hmm.
that's what comforts me, is getting up and performing and being in my element. And so it's just, the brain is a wild machine, and it's
It
really cool. But
is, yeah.
it's funny hearing you say, like, talk about the head bob, because like that's like I close my eyes and I think about my shows, and I like that's how it starts. Like usually people are just kind of looking at you with big eyes, and then you get one or two head bobs, and then you start seeing some people
Mm-hmm.
start to sing along, and it just kind of, you can kind of build on that. And it's
Yep.
just a, it's
Yeah.
a feeling that's totally, it's just awesome, and it's addictive, and that's why we do it. So um I want you to tell people, and here at the end we're gonna, we can talk about shows you've got coming up real quick, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
happily put those on the screen for everybody to see, and your social media is everywhere where people can follow you. I want you to tell people who are listening who maybe have never heard you play, or maybe have no idea who you are, kind of what people can expect from a Casey Callison show, whether it's solo or band.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I'd say that I'm gonna play songs that if you've lived around here most of your life, you can relate to and find some comfort in. Stories and happenings that happened in my life that have happened to everybody around the Midwest. So, kind of like we talked about earlier, finding stuff that you relate to, that that you're not the only one seeing these things or feeling these things, or have these different sites throughout your life that like, okay, maybe it wasn't that abnormal, or I like to play things that are relatable for everybody, that are also fun. A lot of my songs that I write personally are sad but also have an upbeat feel to them. So you can definitely expect to stomp your feet, to clap. It's going to be high energy. There's steel guitar, there's electric guitar. It's a lot of fun. Yeah,
That's
I'd say
awesome.
that's about it for my shows. Yeah.
Cool. Well, everybody, I've known Casey for 15 years. He's a consummate professional. He's a great guy, and really honored to call you my friend. But definitely
Thanks, man.
to have been, we've shared the stage several times. We're both playing the Queen City Shout Music Festival in
Hmm.
Springfield,
Yeah.
and I hope we can get together and share the stage a lot more often. So, thank you for being my first guest, being the guinea pig.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for thinking of me.
Yeah, man. Listen, it's again, I'm stepping into a different avenue here, but having somebody who I've known for so long, and somebody who's such a good friend, has kind of helped me get through this first episode. So, thanks a lot for being here. But the last question I want to ask, and this is kind of going to be my calling card question, and
All right.
I think I'm going to know at least one of your answers, but I want you
All
to
right.
build your dream concert. You get an opener, a co-headliner, and a headliner. Go.
Ooh, opener, co-headliner, and headliner.
Yep.
Opener is going to be someone like I was talking about earlier that's small, maybe not a lot of people know, but should. So probably Pony Bradshaw because he just released his North Georgia album record, North Georgia Rounder album record, and it's just on my mind all the time. Co-headliner would probably be Turnpike.
Okay.
And headliner, man, that's tough because I want to keep it. If I'm building a concert, I want it to all stay kind of in the same vein. So, because I'm trying to think of people like I've seen a lot of people like Brooks and Dunn was a blast. This is a harder question than I figured it would be.
I gotta be honest. I really thought Turnpike was going to be your headliner, so I'm really interested to see where you're going to go with the headliner position.
So Turnpike, as far as like my love for their songwriting, is definitely like number one. But at the same time, I can't deny the fact that there are others out there that just put on a stellar show that
right?
Can't be denied. So, I'm trying to think. I'm looking through my phone here at my recent playlists. Actually, I changed my first one. The opener is The Wilder Blue for sure.
Okay.
And if you don't listen to them, they're like the country version of the Eagles. They do like big 5-part harmonies, and they're just absolutely unreal. I'll throw it back, and if I could, like from any genre, I'd probably throw Johnny Cash as the closer because I've heard that his shows were just absolutely electric.
Yeah,
for being a not heavy electric band.
Right? Yeah, there's no time constraints or era constraints on this question. So you're going, what was the first band? I don't think I've ever heard of them.
The Wilder Blue.
The Wilder Blue. Okay, I'm going to look them up tonight. Then you've got Turnpike as your co-headliner and Johnny Cash as your headliner. That sounds like a pretty sweet.
I think so.
That's pretty sweet. It's a pretty sweet show. So this week, you have any shows coming up this weekend or next week off the top of your head?
No, the next gig I have is the 18th, and that's with Honkytonk Dream up at Bates County Fairgrounds. And then March 26th, we'll be doing the Queen City Shout at Mother's from 4:40 p.m. to 5:40 p.m., and that's going to be full band. So you have an hour of a lot of fun, and you can have some of the best beer around as far as I'm concerned. Mother's is awesome, and the atmosphere is awesome. Everybody that works there is awesome. It's just a great place in general.
That's awesome.
And then, yeah. And April 7th, my full band will be at Lindbergh's. We're partnering with the Hook Knives for a split bill there. Yeah. And then this isn't a show, but next Friday, I'm getting together to start recording on an EP. So
Very
hopefully
nice.
have 5 or 6 songs actually recorded and mastered and ready to go for you to stream and listen to and put in your CD player if you so have one still. But
that's awesome, man. Yeah, that's great. And like I said, I play at Moon City Pub on the 26th for the Queen City Shout from 3 to 4, and then I'm going to book it over to Casey's show. So if you guys want to come out for that would be awesome. I'll be in the crowd. You can come hang out, drink a beer with me, and we can listen to the Shin Kickers play. And then so this Friday or this Saturday, the 11th, for me, I'm playing at the Dive on Patton, which used to be Patton Alley. They're reopening that back up. So they've got like 6 or 7 local guys that are kind of stacked throughout that night. And then next Thursday, the 16th, I'm at Bamboozled here in Branson West. And then the 18th, I'm at Turkey Creek Brewery in Hollister, which will be my first time there. The 24th, I'm at Vino Cellars in Springfield. And the 26th, I'll be with Casey and the Queen City Shout. And if you don't know about the Queen City Shout, it's your first year doing that. It's my first year doing that. They've got like 50 local musicians and arts and all sorts of different things. And I think it's like $15 to get in, and you can hop to all the different bars and places that are having live music. So I'm super excited about that. And like I said, if you come to my show, you can go with me and we can go watch Casey at Mother's, and it's going to be a really,
Yeah.
really cool time. So, Casey, we got Facebook, Instagram. Where can people follow you, and where can people check out your music?
Yep. Facebook is Casey Callison. Um, Instagram is Casey_Callison. My TikTok is also Casey_Callison. And that's CASEYCALLISON. Yeah, that's about it for my social.
All right,
And I
brother.
guess with this Tiny Desk contest, I have to build a YouTube channel as well. So maybe I'll start utilizing that.
Great. Perfect. Dude, I appreciate it so much. Thank you again. Tell
Thank you
Izzy
for
and
having me,
Brooks I
man.
said hi. Looking forward to
Yeah,
seeing you on the 26th if I don't see you before then.
absolutely, man. Have a great night.
All right. See you, brother.
Bye.